My name is William Schmidt, and I am a software engineer by profession, but I'm also a commercial pilot and a flight instructor. So you get plenty of software engineers on there. So I thought I'd talk about an aviation career today, which I'm really excited about. So, as a flight instructor, the first thing I would do with a student is to sit down with them, at a table offline. We take a look at some books and diagrams on how airplanes fly. So, teach a little bit about the aerodynamics, and you have to understand the control surfaces on the aircraft and how they allow you to turn and climb and descend, so that when you're in the cockpit you can use the controls here to control the aircraft. So you need to understand how the airplane flies, so you can understand how you're controlling it. Um, and of course, we'll you do that first, then we go out and fly, and you control the airplane to begin with in your first flight. I got my first job at 16 during the summer. I was working at an airport, and I was really excited about taking flight training, and they had, of course, a flight school there. So I could work about 12 hours at my rate at that time and afford 1 hour of flight training. So I would do that, and I would be able to get in 2 to 3 hours every week of flight training, and I did that all summer long, and got my student pilot's license that allowed me to solo in an airplane. And then I was working on my private pilot license, which is the ultimate goal, so that you can fly anywhere you want to. So I had to keep working on it after that summer, but I was able to achieve my private pilot license before I graduated from high school. I joined the Coast Guard, the United States Coast Guard, which is a branch of the military service, and I I became I studied there and became an electronics technician in the Coast Guard, and I really loved what I was learning. And by the way, the military has excellent training. Their training courses are made for anybody to come up to speed on what they're supposed to know. I went through that, and then after I got out of the military, I started college, and I started in engineering. I wanted to be an electronics engineer because I was a little bit older then. I was a couple years older than the other students. Um, I had a new attitude towards these professors. I would ask them questions, and if they didn't explain it well enough, I'd keep asking, you got to explain this to me. I don't understand. What about this? And I found that the professors then started teaching to me. They'd be looking at me while they were teaching the rest of the class. And if I was nodding, they would go on. And if I had a quizzical look on my face, they would stop and explain it better. And so I got a much better education just by my attitude toward them, which was respectful but demanding. And actually went on to get a more advanced degree, a master's degree in computer science, and so that's where I'm working now in my day job. But I through the years, while I was making some pretty decent money, I kept flying, and I kept getting more licenses. I got my commercial pilot's license, my instrument rating, um, multi-engine license. Then I got my instructor's license so I could teach. And then you need to get an instructor's license in each one of those commercial multi-engine instrument. So I just kept working up through it because I loved flying. So now when I'm not at my day job, I will do flight instruction. And it's so much fun introducing people to the world of aviation and flying. Um, I really love it, and I like seeing people, experience actually controlling the airplane, and you can do that on your very first flight. So, if you're interested in aviation, I highly recommend it. Now, I was not the best student in school because mostly I was bored with what they were telling me, and I remember I was always thinking of other stuff, and the teacher would call on me, and I'd have no idea what she was asking. So I had trouble paying attention. I was very mischievous, and I specialized in just barely staying out of trouble. So I appeared to be a pretty good kid, but I did a lot of mischievous things. And one of those that I recalled was, um, I didn't do real well in tests. So I came up with this idea that I would make a little cheat sheet that would go underneath my watch. And so that when the teacher wasn't looking, I could pull out my cheat sheet and see the answers to the questions. So I set about doing this, and I wrote down all this stuff in a piece of paper, as I went through the book. I wrote down all the important information, and it was way too big. So I had to look at it all and come up with abbreviations and little drawings and try to write as small as I possibly could. And finally, after a lot of work, I was able to get it small enough to fit under my watch. So the next day, I took a look at the cheat sheet before I went into class, and so I could recall all my abbreviations and what was on there. Well, I got working on the test and came up with the first hard problem, and I remembered what was on the cheat sheet. So I just wrote down the answer. Got to the next problem, same thing. And I realized that I had all the answers memorized. I didn't need to look at my cheat sheet, but I taught myself how to study. And from then on, I used kind of the same technique to study for tests, and it worked great. I didn't need to use a cheat sheet at all, but knowing that I had it there was was all that I needed. My advice in general is find something that you're really passionate about and dive into it, find out everything you can about it, you really put yourself into it. But also, don't be afraid to learn things in all other branches of knowledge. It has helped me so much to have learned things about history, things about psychology, or um, just lots of things you don't at the time think, yeah, I've got no interest in this, but go ahead and absorb it, because believe me, later on it comes back. You'll meet somebody that knows something about that, and if you can talk intelligently, you're instant friends.